The Russian Revolution of 1917 is also called the Bolshevik Revolution or the October Revolution. In 1917, there were actually two revolutions in Russia. At this time, Russia was losing to the Germans in World War I mainly because they lacked modern industry and didn't have an adequate railroad system to get supplies to the front. Confidence was not very high in the Tsar, Nicholas II. Because of the war, food was low, unemployment high, and inflation out of control. Because of these conditions, many workers became politicized and joined revolutionary organizations. On February 28, 1917, Nicholas II relinquished his throne. Put in its place was a provisional government. Soon after the provisional government was in power, many of the problems that helped them overthrow the Tsar still existed. Russia was still doing bad in the war, bread was still scarce, and the people were calling for more drastic changes. At this time, Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia. He provoked the workers with statements like, "Bread, peace, and land," and "Down with the provisional government, all power to the Soviets." His group, the Bolsheviks, were continually organizing workers, peasants, and soldiers. On October 24th to the 25th, 1917, pro-Bolshevik soldiers, sailors, and Red Guards stormed the Winter Palace and arrested members of the provisional government. The following day, elections handed the majority of the seats to the Bolsheviks. But 1 month later, when elections were held again, the Bolsheviks failed to gain a majority of the seats. The next day, they simply took control. This immediately led the Bolsheviks into a civil war with the Whites. The Whites were a group of different factions, including former officials, moderate socialists, nobles, and military leaders that wanted to return to a monarchy. Though the Bolsheviks, now called the Communists, were plagued from the Whites, not only the Whites, but also the Allies, Great Britain, France, and the United States, they somehow survived this onslaught. And when the Allies finally withdrew their troops from the Soviet Union in 1920, the Civil War came to an end. Fighting with the Bolsheviks and Lenin throughout this time was Joseph Stalin and Leon Trotsky. Lenin put in Stalin as the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1922. But in 1923, Lenin fell ill. It looked as if Trotsky would be the one to take over his leadership, seeing as how this is what Lenin wanted. He already saw Stalin as dangerous. But of course, Stalin made sure this didn't happen when Lenin did die in 1924. Stalin tricked Trotsky into missing Lenin's funeral, and he himself very publicly grieved the death, when secretly it made him very happy. Stalin was a man of action, and he actively voiced his opinions in the government. He wanted to build a successful Soviet Union rather than focusing on the worldwide spread of communism. At this time, Trotsky's influence was beginning to end. The cutthroat world of politics just wasn't his place. Soon the rest of the council began to realize that Stalin was betraying them and allying with other political members. When Trotsky tried to disagree with Stalin, he was exiled to Central Asia. Stalin continued to gain power and exiled those who disagreed with him. He used propaganda with the help of advisors like Vyacheslav Molotov to also win over the people. But instead, he pushed for immediate collectivization of land, rapid state-controlled industrialization. He began taking land from peasants and dislocated millions. On the outside, Stalin's Soviet Union showed a cheerful and prosperous facade, but this only masked a regime built on murder and terror.